I'm doing a talk on healthy holiday cooking, which I do quite frequently. So there might be some stuff you've seen before and also some new stuff. I wanted to really tell you about how holiday cooking, if you're doing it by yourself, you can control how many calories, and you can control how many calories because you're bringing it to certain people. There's been a misconception though. A lot of us think we gain weight during the holidays. It's not true, we don't. We eat a lot of calories during these meals, but it's not true on how much weight we actually gain. And I'm going to go through some of those myths later. But what are we eating right now? Right now, the typical Thanksgiving dinner is about 3,650 calories. The one on the right is only about 2,000 calories. So if you look at it, it's crazy how 8 ounces of turkey when you're not eating white meat gives you 480 calories. And so there's a lot of things that we eat during Thanksgiving, which is similar to Christmas too. And then cider or white wine is one of those culprits too. So wine, you got to make sure you keep up with your wine because it is about 150 calories per glass. And I had to do this. One of my favorite classes when I was in culinary school was actually food history. I hated history growing up until I went into food history. And in food history, I learned a lot. We've been told many lies about Thanksgiving and what was actually there. There are only 2 documents in possession that signify what they ate on Thanksgiving. And these are the 2 documents I'm going to show you. This one's the first one, and all it says is they killed as much fowl as with little help beside served company almost a week. So pretty much they just got a lot of fowl. But that was it. And they killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and gave to the governor. The Indians were there to help them, but there is no talk about all the foods that we eat today. That's actually occurred around the 1960s. And then this is the other part of it. In this, you'll see that they fished a lot, and there was the cod. So there was fish and cod in there, and wild turkeys, and venison. But there's no talk about the side dishes that we're used to having and things like that. This is all we know about the original Thanksgiving. And you can find, there's a really cool website, Plymouth, I can't remember what it's called, but something Plymouth, and it's for kids. And you can test yourself on how much you actually know about Thanksgiving. And we don't know that much about it, I will tell you that. It's very interesting how times have changed, and through different religious practices, we've built Thanksgiving into our calendar year. It has nothing really to do with the actual Thanksgiving that we always refer to. And it's really, really interesting, and I don't like people butchering Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving was actually a really, really special time, but it's not what we think it is. So, the truth about holiday eating, and this is from Cooking Light, most people put on 5 to 7 pounds during the holidays. That's not true. We only put on maybe a pound, if that, but it's the kind of calories that you're getting. They're fat calories, and they're calories that you don't necessarily want in your diet. They'll weigh you down sometimes, make you feel lethargic, which I'll talk to you about in a little second, which is eat a lot of turkey and you'll be snoozing shortly. That's the trifectin effect, that stuff that's inside the turkey. It's in such small amounts that it's not going to make you sleepy. You're sleepy because you've been eating all day, usually, and on top of that, you've been cooking all day. A lot of people ask me what I eat after I cook, and I always tell them Del Taco or McDonald's. I have probably one of the worst diets in the world. And why is that? Because I cook all day long, and the last thing I want to do is cook a meal for myself again. And for it to be healthy, all I do is healthy cooking. And so my mind automatically triggers into thinking whatever's fast, easy, and can get you full is the way that you're going to eat today. And so that's kind of what you go through during Thanksgiving. We go through these cravings, and we'll satisfy that craving and then go on to the next thing. But it's because we've got so many other things that we're doing, whether it's shopping, getting a guest list out, doing all these things while you're eating. You end up not caring about what you eat. And so that's important for you to remember too. And then, hold on one second. They're inside, no, they're inside that back room. No, do you have my keys? Okay. Alrighty, and then great cooks and festive parties place our willpower at risk. It's not. Most great cooks are actually very good about the portion control and things like that. So you just need to make sure that you know what you're eating. So, food temptations to be aware of: chips and dip, pretty much anything with a crunch. Crunchy foods, if you're not making them by yourself, like chips and things like that you're buying store-bought, have a lot of fat in them. I would say that if you are going to need chips or something crunchy, to use something like a baked pita chip, make it by yourself, or tortilla chips. They last for quite a while, so you can have them laying around and just store them wherever you find necessary. No, you got it? Okay. Alrighty. This is the other one. Food court and malls are going to be your worst friends. Who's actually gone to eat at the food court at the mall? I'm number one culprit. That Mongolian place with the noodles and everything. Yeah, you got to use the heat of your hand to push everything down. Yeah. Okay, well, number one, if you're doing Chinese food, the one thing you never get is noodles. The noodles in a Chinese restaurant have, I would say, you could probably say 200% more calories than any rice dish. Noodles are made with oil and flour, and the only way to get that kind of chewiness to it is with chemicals too. So it's probably the worst choice that you can possibly get inside of food when you're choosing Chinese food. Go for the white rice or the fried rice if you need to have something. But the food court is a huge culprit of our weight gain during the holidays. Open bars at any party. Alcohol is calories, empty calories, you guys. What was it? Somebody said Jack and Diet Coke. So not Jack and Diet Coke, sorry. Rum and Coke. Rum and Diet Coke was one of those things that a lot of women started drinking because it was low calorie. The problem, with using diet with alcohol, I just need you to know that whenever you mix alcohol with a diet drink, it's actually worse for your body because it's thinking that it's sugar, but it's not sugar. And so you're faking your body out. And when you fake your body out like that, what ends up happening is you'll absorb more of the alcohol then because it's looking for that sugar that you said you were going to give it, and you're not giving it, so it'll grab it from the alcohol and it'll get you more drunk. So be careful when mixing diet drinks with alcohol. Leftovers. Everybody's got leftovers. Leftovers are our best friend during the holidays because we always seem to be able to come up with some cool new dish with them. But they are usually dark meat whenever we're using turkey because everybody eats all the the turkey breast. And leftovers are usually areas of food that might not have been cooked all the way or might have had more fat. So for example, like edges of like a stuffing that maybe people don't like the crunchy stuff and things like that. But just be careful with leftovers because leftovers can be deadly. Or sweet potatoes. Mashed sweet potatoes, people will take them and make something else with them. But you have to remember that those mashed sweet potatoes already had things added into them, and so adding more to it would give you more calories. Any kind of drink, hot or cold. Eggnog is your worst enemy at this time. Grazing instead of eating. Make it a point to eat 3 to 6 meals, 3 to 5 meals, 2 snacks in between. When you sit down and eat, your stomach feels full. When you're grazing or just going over things, you're never full. You could eat forever. And that's why buffets, in Vegas now they have the buffet pass where you can get a buffet pass and you can go to any buffet you want at any time of day. That's the way that you gain weight, slowly. You eat starting from 8 o'clock in the morning until like 12 o'clock at night, and you think you're doing it right because you're eating small portions and small amounts, but when you add it all up, that's when it gets scary and how much you're actually eating. So, in regards to substitutions, old ingredients and new ingredients. So breadcrumbs, oat bran, wheat bran, any of those. 1 egg for 2 large egg whites or 1/4 cup egg white substitute. Cream, half and half, or evaporated skim milk, which works really well, but it is a canned product and it's processed, so a lot of people don't like it. Butter and baking, use yogurt, applesauce, or buttermilk. If you notice, there was no actual butter or added fat in your pumpkin bar. Cheese, go for the sharp stuff. All-purpose, go for whole wheat or unbleached. And then sugar, date sugar is my new thing. If you haven't figured out how to make it, email me and I'll get that to you. Sour cream, low-fat yogurt, ground beef, lean ground turkey, or chicken. And then in baked goods, not with my recipes, I always have to remind people, I already knock things down as much as I can, So don't do this to my recipes. When you ever come up across a recipe that says like 2 cups of butter with 7 cups of sugar, that's when you can try it with this one. So you can reduce it half the fat, mainly for cakes, muffins, and cupcakes. Don't do it with cookies. Cookies are in a world of their own. Sugars and the fat are creamed differently in cookies that give them that texture. So messing with anything with a cookie usually ends up in disaster. Unsweetened applesauce, canned crushed pineapple or mashed bananas. And then for acidic ingredients, add about 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda to start. So if you're going to be making something that has lemon in it, do that first. Vegetable purees, potatoes, squash, cauliflower, canned pumpkin, nut butters, fat-free, low-fat sour cream, low-fat yogurt, or use egg whites. Again, 2 egg whites for every 1/4 cup, or 2 egg whites for every egg. Whisk egg whites to a soft peak and fold into a batter to lighten. This is one of my favorite tricks. Most Asian cakes, chiffon is the way that they make it. They never add any fat in there. There's no fat inside. Maybe a little bit of butter drizzled in at the melted butter at the end. But pretty much all they're doing is there's the egg yolk portion, the dry portion, and then the egg white portion. Egg whites and egg yolks get beaten up until they're very, very light and fluffy, and that will give you the effect of having butter in your baked goods because it's lightening everything up. And then nut and fruit butters. Okay. Other substitution, decrease the meat and increase the vegetables called for in stews and casseroles. And the other one is meatloafs and any kind of meat formed kebabs, things like that. You can definitely add those. Choose whole grain versions of pasta. Serve whole grain side dishes like bulgur or kasha. I did whole wheat Israeli couscous today. Oil misters, olive oil misters are good. And oven frying is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm going to show you what we did with the oats too. Use garlic or onion powder instead of onion garlic salt because of the salt in them. Buy reduced fat cheeses. And anything with milk or cream, try rice milks, nut milks. And you can also use prunes. Prunes are a great substitute for applesauce or any kind of butter. The only problem with it is that it is an incredible amount of fiber that you're adding to your diet, so it ends up being a little bit problematic for some people. So if you want to do a prune substitute, which is really great for your digestive system, do half of it and then half applesauce or something like that because you don't want to shock your system that much. And then use fresh frozen fruit without added sugar if fresh is unavailable. I will tell you, some fruit these days, it's just so out there. We're having a bad apple season if you didn't know that too. Apples are gone. People who have been trying to pick them have picked them all already. So what we have is what we have. This is it, you guys. So we have a very short apple season this year. Frozen apples you can't buy, so we're out of luck with that. But things like berries, I almost feel like they're better frozen. They're picked more at peak, they're more consistent in flavor, and therefore you get all the nutrients. Whereas if you bought them fresh, you might not have all the nutrients that you need or that you want to get out of them, like antioxidants and things like that. Alrighty, so let's talk about what I made today. So I try to do a menu that's it's a vegetarian. I was going to show you how to make tofurkey, but then I decided against it because tofurkey is really frustrating. Has anybody tried to make a tofurkey before? Anyone? I don't know. No? Okay. For those who are interested in learning how to make a tofurkey, all it really is tofu ground up really, really well and then pressed together into the shape of the tofurkey. And so that's pretty much, they add different things into it, but that's the general idea of it. So, how many people are ordering a turkey this year? Really? You guys are all making your own turkeys? Wow, okay. So for those who are wondering how do I make things faster, I gave you a little packet, not how to make things faster, but a little bit of a holiday menu. I gave you recipes for your most generic items, and I've done this before, so I didn't want to go through it. But these are recipes, and just to give you like a comparison of what there is and what it is that you're eating and what you can do about it. So for like cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, what do you do about each of those items? Okay, and before we move on, and we talk about the things that I made, I just wanted to show you this comparison between pumpkin pie and pecan pie. Everybody loves pecan pie, I understand. If you really need to have pecan pie, this is my suggestion to you. Number one, make a nut crust. So make the crust of your pie out of the pecans if you really miss the pecans. Number two, you can candy pecans. So take each pecan, candy it, like toss it in brown sugar, or you can do agave, you can do any of those, or honey, and then spices of whatever kind you want. And when you make your pumpkin pie, crumble it on top of it. And that way you get a little bit of that crunch from the pecan, but you're not getting all that fat, because the number one thing that goes into pecan pie that's so bad for you, and there are some substitutes, but it doesn't make it the same, it's our good old friend corn syrup. Our Karo corn syrup just tastes so good inside a pecan pie, and we cannot take it out for some reason. It's really hard to make it taste good without it. And so that is what you get. And look at the amount of vitamin A you get in a pumpkin pie versus a pecan pie. It's almost like pumpkin pie should be something we should incorporate in our daily diet. For 243 calories a slice, it's definitely not something that you can, it's something that you can definitely have in your diet. The only other thing about pies is the crust and what they're using to make the crust. Flaky, flaky crusts equals a lot of extra Crisco. Butter can't give you flakes. Crisco gives you flakes. Butter gives you crumbs. And so there's a difference between making, that's why in French bakeries they call it pâte brisée. And pâte brisée is made with egg yolks and then butter, but it's a crumbly texture. It's almost like if you were to take graham crackers and crumble it together. Crisco gives you the layers and layers and layers because it doesn't melt like butter does. Yeah, it stays like that. It stays that way for you. Oh, I don't know if my tamale guy is in here. So 1 year ago, tamales are one of those things that we eat during the holidays too. And a few years ago, somebody asked me if you could make tamales without added fat, without adding the Crisco or the lard. First of all, I always say go for the lard. Don't go for the Crisco, go for the lard, so the manteca stuff. I've had amazing success, though. I don't know if she's here. No, she's not here. Amazing success with just using chicken stock. So when you read your tamale recipe next time, just add the stock instead of the fat. And it holds it all together, and it steams just like that and everything. The trick is add a little bit of baking soda. Baking soda gives you that fluff that you get normally from the tamale or the lard that you would add inside. So for this one, we did a sweet potato kale risotto baked. Has anybody ever tried baking a risotto? Okay. So this is one of those things that you bake it. It's easier to do than doing it on the stovetop. And what I really wanted to tell you is, where are my boys? Taylor? He's gonna go grab me one. What you do with leftover risotto. Can you grab me a risotto? Thank you. And so all that went inside was kale, and I would be honest with you. We use good old Trader Joe's kale out of the bag. There is nothing wrong with this stuff, and I'll tell you why. For the price that you get for this, you get a lot more kale than buying bunches of it from Melissa's, because the stems that they have are thick, and you can't use that. These, yeah, there's some stems in here, but they're fine enough that you can eat it, so it's not gonna be a problem. So, usually when you make risotto, you are standing up here by the stove, stirring away, stir, 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 forever and ever. With this risotto, it's nice and easy because all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna saute everything up. So I've got onion here that I'm just gonna chop up. And you can use onion, garlic, you can use red onions if you want. This is really something that you can make your own. And then to cut this part, I already cut it in half. Roots intact, use the tip of my knife and cut, and then go inside like that, and then chop away. So I'm gonna cook this up with a little bit of garlic, and we are set to go. So I'm gonna put it in there with a little bit of olive oil, and I am still on my idea, I'm still in the school of thought that if you like the flavor of onion and garlic, start it in cold oil. Don't start it in hot oil. Hot oil will seize up each of those little pieces. I've gotten into trouble for saying that before. I've had like debates in the middle of a cooking class with somebody about it, which is the wrong thing to do. But if you really think about it and you look at the garlic, yeah, each piece is burnt. That means that each piece, the flavor's in that little piece. It's not in the oil. I want everything to taste like garlic, so I'll start everything cold. And then the other thing is the arborio rice. Trader Joe's does a good job of it, but if you want the good stuff, Camarillo is the type, Canaroli. Canaroli, C-A-N-A-R-O-L-I, is the type of risotto that you want to be using. It's not a finer grain, but it's a nicer grain. It's more even in size, and it just cooks a lot better than the arborio does. Arborio is good though. Don't try to use the short grain rice though. The short grain rice won't work. And so I always have debates about rice with people because like I said, grew up Asian culture, sticky rice. I'm a sticky rice eater. Not all Asian. Vietnamese, Thai is low on grain, loose rice. Japanese, Korean, and Chinese like their tight, sticky rice. So risotto is one of those things that is incredibly hard for some Asian people to eat because it tastes like uncooked rice to them. It just could taste crunchy. But that is the texture that you want. A good risotto should be al dente, that if you took each piece of rice out and cut it through the middle, there should be still a tiny speck of white right in the middle. It's just like they cook their pasta. And so what you want to do is, it's kind of like when we make congee. You start the rice cold, unwashed, never wash this guy. You want the starch because that's what gives you the creaminess inside your dish. So I'm just going to throw some in here and mix away. And then what you want to do is you want to coat each piece of rice with a little bit of oil so that each piece of rice then fluffs up nicely once the liquid hits it. So we used veggie stock today, but I also wanted to show you, so it looks like this. So it's turning a little bit translucent on the sides, and the onions are translucent too. So that's all going to go in. Now the best part, you're going to throw in a little bit of wine. If you are going to be using wine to cook though, please be aware if you are serving it to anybody that can't have it, there is nothing you can do to cook it all out. So you have to be careful when you're cooking with wine. And then I'm going to keep cooking that until all of the wine has disappeared. The reason why you do that is so that you don't have that extra liquid and each kernel now has a little bit of wine and flavor when you add the stock into it. The other things we're going to add in here are kale, which I should have added before I added the wine, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I added after. But you're going to add kale in there as well as sweet potatoes. So let's talk about the good old sweet potato. I'm sure you have heard me say, but 80% of what we sell in California that's labeled yams are sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are smooth, very smooth on the outside. Kind of like that. That picture, sorry. Kind of like that. But they're smooth on the outside. The only difference is the color inside. And it's still hard to tell because a yam should be more of a rich red color, whereas a sweet potato is more of that orangey color. But they're getting very, very close in color right now, so it's hard to tell the difference. All I can tell you is you're probably buying sweet potatoes. Yams are hard to come by in California. You can buy them, but the great thing is that sweet potatoes are healthier for you. So that alone should make you want to eat them more. Just make sure that when you are buying it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the canned stuff, but if you are buying canned yams or sweet potatoes, make sure there's no added water or syrup in there, which they usually do. So you have to be careful with that. Alrighty. And so, and then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was kale before I add it in there. Kale is one of the great superfoods that we all love right now. I want a show of hands of how many people do not like the taste of kale. Oh, go for it. Yep. Okay, there are a few. There are a few people who really just cannot stand the taste of kale. Few options for you. There's adding it, marinating this, first of all. You can marinate it like kimchi. It's like cabbage. It does not wilt. It takes a long time. So you marinate it, number one, for those who don't like it. And the other thing to try to do is rub it with salt before you use it in anything. So just really rub some salt into there. It'll wilt a little, but it'll get nice and soft for you, and it'll take away some of that bitterness that some people can't stand. So do that, and then a squeeze of lemon juice. No matter what it is that you're adding it in, always add a little bit of lemon juice, and it'll take away that kind of bite or that kind of taste that it has that you're trying to avoid. So I've cooked all of my wine, so now that all that's left is the rice, a little bit of fat on the bottom still, and then my onions. And now I'm gonna add my kale and sweet potatoes and artichoke hearts. Artichoke hearts I add. Kale and artichokes have about the same protein, not a lot, but they do provide a little protein in the diet. So I'm gonna stir that all in. Did I what? No, raw. Raw sweet potato. And you can use any kind of squash that you would want to. So that's all gonna go in. And then the last part is you're gonna add your stock in there and just let it come to a boil. So all you're gonna do is let it come to a boil, and as soon as it comes up to a boil, you can stick it into a baking dish. So you're just gonna put it into a baking dish, and I'll do that in a second. This will reduce your cooking time by quite a lot. If you did what I did, yeah, go for it. Oh, frozen, the frozen artichoke hearts from Trader Joe's. Just the plain ones, not the marinated ones. If you do, say you're making a large batch like I was, and you just don't have something to boil that much liquid with the things inside of it, what do? You can still put the cold stock in here with everything else, just add about 20 minutes onto the cooking time. That's the only difference. So you're just gonna have to add a little bit more cooking time so that the liquid could come up to a boil. But you wanna cover it and then put it in there. And then once you're ready to serve it, you can take off the cover and let it broil if you want. You can put the cheese on top and do anything that you want at that point. But what ends up happening with a lot of risotto is you get a lot of leftovers. And I know one of my favorite, I actually like risotto cakes more than I like risotto. So what you do is you take risotto, and you can use flour, you can use panko breadcrumbs if you want, and you don't even actually have to do them on the stovetop. You can actually bake them, and what I'm talking about are risotto cakes. So all you do is you go back in there to your risotto. Almost there. And then you're just gonna form them. So you form these rounds, just like that. And you can stick cheese in there if you want, but then you've got a risotto cake like this that you can then saute up and then have them in the freezer ready to go whenever you're hungry. So this is what you do. So I always make extra risotto because there's always something you can do with risotto afterwards. So now that this is boiled, that is it. I'm gonna turn it off and I'm gonna put it in my baking dish. And that's it. And then I would pop it in the oven, cover it, and ready to go for that. Any questions on that? No? Quick question for you. Do sweet potatoes oxidize? Do you guys know? They do. They do. They just oxidize slower, so just be careful. Because any spot that's black on a sweet potato means it's deficient in vitamin C in that area. So if you've eaten a sweet potato that's been in the refrigerator, that's been peeled, ready to go, unsoaked, and it's starting to oxidize, you're losing a lot of your nutrients too. Anytime you peel anything or soak anything, you'll lose nutrients to whatever you're soaking it in, first of all, and the peels sometimes have a little bit more nutrients. I will say one thing though, this year if you are gonna be making double baked potatoes or like stuffed potatoes, anything with skins, buy organic potatoes. Really, the amount of pesticides that go into potatoes is ridiculous. It's a 21 item list that's legal for potato farmers to use, and that all goes into the peel. And I know potato peels are something that we've been told to eat because they're healthy, but with the amount of pesticides that we're putting into the non-organic stuff, it gets kind of iffy. And remember, if it's organic, it only needs to be 80% organic. You get about 20% leeway. So that's kind of scary. So this one is a salad that I had to do everything. I was just like, roast pears, make garlic crunchies, make a couscous, Israeli couscous, and then a butternut squash crouton too. So there's your information on each of those, and you guys have the recipes for it. I just wanted to tell you, I didn't have time to do it for this one, But if you're ever making sweet potato fries or butternut squash or anything of that sort, use arrowroot or cornstarch. Both of those items will make your Crispies extra, extra crispy. It soaks up the extra liquid because you know how cornstarch kind of gets like that pasty look to it. So what's going to happen is when you add the cornstarch, it absorbs any extra water that you have on there, as well as creating an extra layer of crunch for you. But I thought it'd be important to show you how to take care of a butternut squash. This is not, I guess they're all coming about this size right now. But this is a butternut squash. To take care of it, it's dangerous. Some people will peel, so you can go ahead and peel it. That's one way to do it, or this is what I do. I take off one end, and then I also take off the other end so that I have a flat surface to work on. Then I use my knife and my hand to let it slowly guide it through. If this is one of those super big ones, or if you've got a pumpkin, grab a mallet, like one of those rubber mallets, and just tap, 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 tap. You see how if you let your knife do the work, it's actually not dangerous, but it might not be even either. So once you get to that spot, you're open, and then just take out the seeds. With choosing butternut squash, just look for stuff that isn't bruised and it's got good weight to it. You don't want anything light because that means you've got a lot of seeds in there then. So try to find one with a little bit more weight. And then you can roast this just like this for whatever reason, or we're gonna cut cubes out of it. So what I do is I cut off the round part from that part of it, and then I go around, and then I peel with a knife. Or you can do what I did and go to Trader Joe's and buy their big pieces, and you quarter them. That's what I did. And so just toss these with a little bit of seasoning, whatever kind you like. We use garlic and then Italian seasoning, and you're ready to go. These guys don't oxidize. So you can keep these out for a little bit longer, but they get that starchiness to them. So be careful when you work with them, because you can end up with like a layer of orange stuff on your hand after a while if you're not careful. And then the oat crunchies. So let me just talk to you about the oat crunchies. This is a new attempt at me. So I wanted to give you something crunchy that had protein, because this is vegetarian, and as well as giving you something a little bit different. So I will tell you one edit that well, not one edit, but one thing I want you to be aware of is that when you cook these garlic crunchies, and we'll have the recipe online, when you cook them, you want them in a very, very thin layer. And they'll be mushy at first, but then as soon as you take them out of the oven and let them cool to room temperature, they'll crunch up. So just be patient with it. When the recipe's online, you'll see it. But all it is honey, olive oil, and a lot of garlic. This whole gym smelled like garlic yesterday. I'm sorry for anybody that was working in here. But that's all you do. You just cook that up. And then for the couscous salad part, I was able to find whole wheat couscous, Israeli couscous, at Wholesome Choice. So they do sell that there now. Israeli couscous is really just pasta, if you didn't know. It's not as healthy as couscous is. It is more of a pasta grain, but the whole wheat version is pretty healthy too. And then the butternut squash croutons, we just tossed in cornstarch. If you want to make them crunchier, you can toss them in a little bit of cornstarch. And then for the pears are in season right now. They look just as bad as the apples do though. They're not looking very good right now either, but they are in season, so use them. Roasting them helps them with their flavor. So roasting any kind of fruit, apples, pears, any of those guys will bring out the sweetness of them, and we cheat with a little bit of brown sugar too. Alrighty, last one, pumpkin bars. Super easy pumpkin bar. So I wanted to do a pumpkin something because pumpkin is in season right now. The one I've noticed something really interesting. I've been teaching cooking for a while, and I've noticed slowly and slowly Libby's has stopped pushing their pie filling, the pie filling that's already pre-mixed for you. They're all going to just the 100% pumpkin. So nobody's doing that anymore. Because you can add your own things into pumpkin to make it taste good. So we have, what I've got here is the pumpkin. So what I always say is mix your wet ingredients together into your dry ingredients. It's the easiest way to remember things. So I've got my pumpkin ready to go. Oh, this recipe calls for 2 cups. 2 cups is 1 container of the one 15-ounce can. If you do end up with more, like leftover pumpkin, it freezes really well. Take it out, freeze it in a Ziploc bag, and the way that I remember it, some people might laugh, but the way I remember what I'm freezing is I'll take the can and I'll put the Ziploc bag into the clean can and then put it in there. That way I know that that's my pumpkin ready to go. So I've got that. I've got eggs. So 4 eggs. A lot of you might say, okay, 4 eggs, can I reduce the fat on that? Yes, you can. Take 2 of those eggs out and you can do 4 extra egg whites, sorry. So you can take 2 eggs out and do 4 egg whites if you really wanted to. So I've got that going. And then the 2 things that make it light and fluffy and make it act like an actual butter product we're adding in there is our good old applesauce, unsweetened applesauce, and then buttermilk. Both those things will give you the fluff that butter does without the added calories. That is it. There's no vanilla in the recipe, but if you want, feel free to add a little bit of vanilla too. And then in this bowl, I'm going to add my flour, baking soda and baking powder, cinnamon, and sugar. Oh, I'm going to add my sugar into this too. So I'm going to add my sugar into my wet ingredients. Whenever you see brown sugar in a recipe, it always goes into your wet ingredients. Don't try to mix it with your dry ingredients because it won't break up. There's molasses in it, and therefore it needs a little bit of liquid to help dissolve, or at least mix in correctly. So that's all going in there. And that's it. All right. And then over here, sifting is no longer necessary. Just grab a whisk. The main clumps that you're looking to make sure get broken up are usually your baking soda and baking powder, especially if they've been sitting around in your pantry for too long. So all of that gets mixed in. And then I'm just going to dig a hole. And I'm going to mix. This isn't a batter that you can overwork, thank goodness. There's not a lot of flour in there. And so mainly you're working on the pumpkin, and so there's not a lot of glutens that you could be overworking, whereas most of the time when you're making a cake or batter like this, you want to be careful. If you didn't want to use pumpkin, you can use yam sweet potato puree too that you make on your own. You can use pretty much anything that has that kind of consistency. And this makes two cakes, or 2 bars, 2 things of bars. And that's it for that. So that's my batter portion. And then we've got our crumble topping. And for our crumble topping, brown sugar, whole wheat pastry flour, if you can find it. We only have white right now, so we're going to add white flour in there. Oats, cinnamon, and your walnuts. So go ahead and use any nuts that you want. Sometimes this time of year is the best time to get deals on nuts, just because everybody is using nuts for some reason or another. If that is the case, buy your nuts and store them in the freezer. Freezers are great places. They don't turn rancid in there. So there we go. You can use almonds too. Almonds are good. Hazelnuts. Hazelnuts are the nuts of the season. So if you guys haven't had any hazelnuts recently, go for it. So we're going to add the small amount of butter, which I didn't do for yours. I kept yours completely butter-free. But what you're going to do is you're going to add in butter. I used grapeseed oil. So you can use grapeseed oil or butter. It's really up to you. And you're just going to push it around, mix it up. And you can make this into a muffin too if you want. It doesn't necessarily need to be a bar. Oh, and I did sneak in some chocolate chips for you guys. Sorry. Yeah, I know. That part wasn't in the recipe. I snuck that in. Didn't think you could go wrong with having that. So, oh, and Trader Joe's chocolate chips now are gluten-free for those who care, but I have to always wonder where to find them. So I'm going to grab a pan. Again, this batter should make about 2. They're really thin because if you look at the amount of baking soda and baking powder you're adding in there, it's actually quite a lot. So it's a pretty thin layer that you're going to be adding. Just like that. And then you're going to spread it. So let the batter do the work. A lot of people will spread and then you'll end up with a lump. When you spread something like this, like a batter, use the batter to spread itself. Don't actually go all the way to the bottom of the pan or anything. Just use the batter to kind of push itself to the edge and around. Just like that. And then I'm going to add my crumble topping. And then that will go straight into the oven and bake for, depending on the size, this should take about 20-25 minutes to bake. And that's about it. And that's it. Any questions? No? We're all good? Did you guys like everything? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah, mainly with just holiday eating, you just want to make sure that you know what you're eating. But like I said, when everybody is so health conscious, it's kind of hard to avoid those healthy items at a potluck and whatever anyway. You usually can get away with eating a salad. I always say, before you leave the house, it's a couple of tricks for you who are going to a party. Number one, drink warm water. Warm water will fill your stomach up right away, and it'll make you feel full, and it'll make you feel satisfied too. Warm water has that effect. The other thing is eat an apple or a slightly green banana. Slightly green bananas have resistant starch in them, and the resistant starch makes you feel full. And it'll keep making you feel full for the rest of that meal or whatever. But I will tell you, it's faking yourself out. So you have to watch yourself, because your body will sometimes trigger and be like, well, no, you can't lie to me anymore. I want my food. I want my sugar and things like that. So just be aware that when you start eliminating certain things out of your diet, your body's going to reject you for doing that and ask you for more of it. You might crave it even more. So sugar's the number one. Like when people go from regular sodas to diet sodas, their body's craving sugar like all the time for a while before it actually gets built into their system that, no, I don't need that much sugar in my diet. So just be aware of the things that you are eating and drinking. I think that is it. Yep, the only thing was that eggnog is that one drink that you don't want. If you are drinking anything, I had that up there, I thought, but eggnog has a lot of calories in it. So that's it. Any questions, come on up and ask me, but that's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you.